All right, welcome to a special edition of the PoddyC. That's right. It's NDA embargo that's over now, so you can finally hear us talk
Yes.
about surprise.
Yeah,
There's
potty
an alpha.
surprise. We
Yeah, that
are
was a huge surprise.
giving you yeah, no one knew either. Actually, I don't know if anyone actually leaked it. It's kind of insane that it didn't happen. I think it was kind of obvious, right? Like there were some tweets Sunday, which by the way, I did not start. Well, I technically did start this. I like
You absolutely
tweeted
started it.
I tweeted no stream till Wednesday, which is fine on its own. And then just for some reason, everyone did that. So, it's pretty clear something was going on, but no NDAs were violated. So we're good.
Yeah.
Yeah, everyone assumed that Wednesday was like when we get it, but it's more like we actually can talk about it on Wednesday.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
For you guys who are unaware, well, I guess you're maybe aware now, but the embargo just lifted, which is why you're listening to this. And we were able to play alpha for Monday and Tuesday this week. So we've had 2 days of having pretty limited alpha, so pretty limited access. But we have a full slate of things to talk about today. This is going to be really fun. We did some content with each other, but we haven't fully discussed how we feel about all this stuff. So it's going to be kind of first time hearing from each other on how a lot of this stuff worked.
Yeah, so I guess do we want to structure this by talking about the features of the expansion, or do we want to start with like the new information? Because there's been some minor or medium-sized like revelations that we've learned. Not just, or we can talk about the delves. We can talk about
We
the
can go over that first since it's like what people want to hear right away.
yeah, like
Well,
news.
what does that even mean?
Well, like Heroic Week coming back, for instance, is
Oh, that's
Oh,
huge.
wait.
Yeah,
is
that's
news,
massive.
right?
That's big.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That is very good. We learned about that in like a Q&A session. It wasn't even like something that was like initially announced to us. But yeah, that's coming back. I really wonder how, like, because if you remember when they removed Heroic Week and they had the simultaneous release, one benefit for that was it removed the cap on Mythic Plus right away. So like how I think it's gonna be super interesting to see how they handle crests in the upgrade system and also Mythic Plus. Hope if it's uncapped, that sounds the best to me. Like Heroic Week with uncapped, because then it like reduces characters you need. You can only like focus on one kind of, and then like the Mythic Plus people don't feel held back like they did before. What do you guys think?
I wouldn't be surprised if they just do M plus doesn't open until Mythic Week and M zeros are the highest you can do on Heroic Week because they're squishing M plus as well, right?
Oh,
Like that's
yeah.
something that we know is coming in season 4, like next week, right? Is M plus is getting squished. So a plus 0 is going to be like what a plus 10 used to be. You'll get I think it's champion track gear from the vault and veteran from the end of run, or maybe it's even champion track from the run and hero from the vault. I forget. I think that actually might be it. So either way, it's like good loot from M0. It's like what you used to get in plus 10s. So usually they would previously like cap you at plus 6s, plus 7s, something in that range, right? So I wouldn't be surprised if they instead put that cap just at M0. You can do an M0 swoop, but you can't actually do M plus during Heroic Week.
That'd be kind of weird, but
That's how it used to work, basically, right?
Well, it
yeah,
would be
yeah, but just for like the very
yeah.
beginning, right?
Just
Yeah,
for Heroic
well, I
Week,
mean,
just during Heroic
before it
Week.
would cap it at such a low level that now with the squish, that level would almost not even exceed the Mythic
Yeah,
Zero
I mean,
that is new, right?
it would maybe be correct. Like the closest to the old way it would work would be to cap it at heroic dungeons, the new heroic dungeons, which
Yeah, super interesting. I mean, I kind of hope that they get into it right away because you have to think about how the content is actually given to you, right? So while we had heroic weeks, we also had different timelines on releases. So what's happened a couple times is the expansion will come out. There's 2 weeks, and then there's heroic, and then there's mythic. So it's like almost the beginning of the fourth week is mythic. Maybe what it is now, and they did this a couple times in Dragonflight, where it's just the 1 week, and then you're like already in. So like we don't know if like really you're going to be getting Mythic Plus any later than you have before. It might just be that Heroic Raid is available a week before Mythic was previously and Mythic Plus, right? But yeah, interesting to see how they handle that. And on patches, like sometimes, patches you would get the 1 week and then all the stuff. So I guess Mythic will just everything should be the same. It's just Mythic will just be delayed a week.
I think
Yeah.
the only reason for it to be weird is because I would imagine a lot of people just want to like jump straight into it, like patch starts, and then you know how people are. People are like fiending for content. They just like want to grind. But if they're gonna limit M plus, then it kind of like holds back the players from being able to do a whole lot in the first week. Because like if it's capped, then what would you do? It would just be like you do heroic raid and then you just do M zeros, right?
Yeah. I mean, it used to be that you would just farm a bunch of plus 6s, and then the next week you would farm those same dungeons on plus 15s or plus whatever the highest level gear came from.
Yeah.
And that was like a pretty weird pattern. And that's why part of the reason why one of the biggest positives of removing Heroic Week was that they got rid of that. But if you just uncapped M plus during Heroic Week, you get heroic raid gear end of dungeon from a plus 10 run is going to be the new equivalent of what a plus 20 was in season 3. I don't think they want you to get better gear than normal raid before normal raid is even, or like in that first week. I don't think they want that to be a.
I don't know if normal's as much of a thing, because like normal, if you have higher gear to clear normal, that's fine. I think the audience they're going for with normal is they don't want it to be a massive challenge, right? So like maybe that would be okay. I'm kind of getting what you're putting down, but I also think it'd be weird with Mythic Plus. Like I feel like they kind of have to just let people play, and right, like
I mean that
go ahead.
That is what a lot of people used to say to them, and they used to say like, no, we aren't okay with people getting gear that's better than heroic raid or that's equal to heroic raid from M plus like that first week, because we don't want them to be doing M plus instead of heroic raid that week. Now that kind of doesn't make sense given that same option is available now without the heroic week. But I don't know. Yeah, I mean they would have to have experience to change a heart on that philosophy, which I'd be down for. I mean I think that would be better.
Part of their philosophy used to also be we need to save like the Race to World First raiders from themselves. It was like we don't want this. This was stated by them. They were like, we have to do something to combat like the amount of gear farming that can happen before Mythic. But I think since then, it's been an entire expansion since they've done this. I think they've learned to just like, hey, we're just gonna do crazy shit no matter what. So just always think about everyone else, and then we will do some degenerate thing anyway. So just completely disregard, which is definitely the right move.
One other thing that got mentioned in the Q&A, I'm not sure if you guys caught this, but they did say that the gearing upgrade system, they liked it, they're going to keep it. They weren't making major changes to it, but they were looking at the problem of getting a lot of gear in the first few weeks, and then the long tail of the gearing process being a much more gradual, like slow, not feeling very impactful, not gaining a lot of power thing. So
yeah,
depending on what they do there, that might also affect the first few weeks gearing as well.
Wait, but they've already done that, haven't they?
Yeah, they did that this season.
Yeah, this season moved in a good direction on that, but it's still definitely true that this season, like, remember when we talk about all the problems with Fire Act and Tindral, where guilds are reaching Fire Act and Tindral not much ahead of Liquid and Echo, because Liquid and Echo had, even on the second week of the reset, they had 481, 482 on those bosses, right? Like, that...
So they're slowing down gearing.
I mean, that's what they did.
The thing
this
is,
patch, right?
Hopefully there's a way, especially with warbands, where you can slow down gearing for us and have it not affect anyone. Because you have to understand, we're doing like completely obscene, crazy things that is completely unrelatable to other people. You can actually specifically target stuff like that. But it would have extra benefits for people in the game too. Like I firmly believe that Tindral and Fire Axe tuning is purely because we killed it at 482. If we killed it at 476, maybe 1,000 more guilds kill one of those bosses, right? Because it's tuned at that level. So I'm not quite sure. I'm interested to see how more they do it. I guess the only way you could do that is to lower the amount of Mythic Crest upgrades. Like you can still keep Mythic Track, or not. It's not Mythic. It's called Aspect Crest, right? Like you can still keep the Mythic Track, but like how fast you progress through that is just slower. I felt like there was a little bit of a good feeling with that this season, right? You had like 1 week would be you'd get a new crafting item. The next week you'd get a new catalyst. And then like at least for like a month and a half to 2 months, you were like looking forward to Tuesday, as opposed to season 2 where it was like you were just done, So like they moved in that direction, and maybe they're just like, okay, we liked that we moved in that direction. People said they were going to hate it in season 2. It turns out they didn't hate it. And people liked feeling like their character was getting stronger longer throughout the patch. I just wonder how far they could take that. Definitely be interesting.
Yeah, it's something we heard literally nothing about what they want to do, just that they want to do something about it. So we'll see if anything comes out there. I want to talk about the warbands a little bit though, because you're like the warbands initially looked to a lot of people just like a quality of life overload, basically, right? Like something that if you're depending on how you play this game, like it wouldn't necessarily affect you if you're a super high end player or whatever. It would just be the game is a lot more like good outside of that, right? Like you collect appearances account wide, the reps are account wide, you can move stuff between your characters better. But they did also talk about warbound gear, which is something that is going to affect like alt gearing for everybody. I'm not sure it'll necessarily have an impact on Race to World First, although it might, but it does have a big impact for just like any, like for me personally, I think it's going to have a huge impact to have these warbound gear. So we already saw at BlizzCon that there was like maybe a heroic raid boss would drop a normal piece of warbound gear for you that you could send to one of your characters and give them, you know, a piece of normal raid gear basically that, you know, would maybe be like, oh, I should roll a mage, I got a wand. But they also said in one of the Q&As that there was a currency you could get from at least Delves, but maybe other sources as well, that you could then use to buy warbound gear and send them over to your alts and juice them up. So I don't know, that process of hitting max level and then like going to the auction house and buying gear or whatever, trying to become relevant, or like ratting your way into a heroic raid or something like that to try and get the whatever gear you can find, seems like it's being largely replaced with getting yourself some warbound gear from your main, which I think is very healthy compared to the heroic raid ratting that I have personally tried to do on a lot of my alts, or getting my friends to carry me through a 20.
Oh, everyone knows that feeling.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I feel
personally,
like
that doesn't affect me too much because, like, for me, when I think of my alts, I think of like co-mains. That's like a better way of putting it. Like, you know how like everyone always talks about like their alts, like, oh, like, do you have fun playing alts? But like for me, I want my alts to be as powerful as my main. But that's like really hard to do. Like personally, what really gates me from alts are the really rare items that I need on those alts. Specifically, like two-handed legendaries or Varrock Rage Heart. Like that type of stuff is what keeps me from playing my alts. And I don't know if that'll help with that, but it'll definitely help a lot with the initial startup, as Dratnos has said. With like ratting your character, you could just like get some gear now instead of just like having a complete zero.
Well, they mentioned they were asked in the Q&A, hey, like, how is gearing our alts going to change with the Warbound system? And they answered immediately. They didn't take time to think about it. They didn't like beat around it. They were like, immensely. Like, the way you gear up your alts will be completely different than ever before. It made it sound like Warbound stuff is going to be the primary way that you gear your alts, which sounds awesome. That is, there's like the feeling, you guys know the feeling right now of like, you want to play an alt and you look over and then you like, you get some initial stuff on it, and then you're like, okay, so I would have to do like 300 dungeons or something to get enough crests to make this character worth anything. And it's just like, just a wild, like, okay, cool. I would want to play this alt, but actually that's insane and I won't be doing that, right? Like Warbound could just have such an impact on that. It also just changes the philosophy that they approach the whole game with. Everything is account wide, you know, in parentheses by default, because they're starting it with the Warbound mindset. And they kept mentioning how that has changed the way they looked at it. It's kind of from in Dragonflight. Dragonflight, as far as I could tell, they've done really well with account-wide things, just in general. That used to be a big problem. But Warbound will just even make it more so. Plus, you mentioned quality of life. I think it's cool to have your little 4 guys on the thing around the campfire. I think that's awesome. You also have like a warband bank that you can put gold in. Not sure what the cap is. You can put items in to easily transfer things between alts. Hey, you're doing like Mythic Plus on a bunch of characters. We'll just maybe put 100 verse flasks in that bank, and every time you're about to play, you just grab out of there rather than having to mail it between characters. I mean, that's just, huge quality of life. So I'm a massive fan of the system, and I think it could even be more impactful than we're aware of right now.
So I'm actually curious about the bank. Did they mention anything about like cross server and stuff? I wonder how that's gonna work. Does that mean like you can transfer gold across realms, and can you transfer items across realms?
I think so. I mean, right now on live, you can just trade items cross server now. So.
Oh, can you actually know that?
Yeah, I think they changed that this expansion. So, I'm pretty
That's
sure
big.
that I think they've said your warband is cross server. It's like everything. It's all inclusive. Yeah, I think it's gonna be sick as well. I mean, I also like the idea of being able to collect stuff and make achievement progress and make rep progress as well on whichever character I happen to be logged into each day, instead of having to do this kind of like right now I'm going for the Dragonflight meta achievement, and some parts of it I do on my Druid because that character was what I played in 10.1, and some I'm doing my Warrior because that's what I played in 10.0. And it seems like that kind of philosophically is just not going to be something you have to do anymore in War Within. You can just play any guy you want for anything you want to do, which, I mean, of course, you still need to get gear on each character for, if you want to do high-end content of some kind, like that is not tradable. The Warbound gear is the best you can get for that, and that's probably lower eye level by a significant amount from what you can actually get from Heroic Raid and stuff. But overall, the Warbands feature I think is going to be, it's maybe not the biggest expansion feature to ever be made, but I think it's going to be one of the most impactful, like long-term,
most popular
things.
too.
Yeah, and it's just pure good. It's not going to be one of those things where it's like they took a big swing here and there were some positives and some negatives, right? Like Legion artifact weapons. You look at Legion artifact weapons, you can be like, there was some banger stuff in here, and there was some despair. Warbands is just going to be pure bangers. There's no bad happening here. Nothing, unless they like really flub how Warbound gearing all.
Or if there's
works.
Not enough of it.
Yeah, exactly. I'd count that as flubbing it. That kind of thing maybe could cause some negative sentiment, but I expect this is going to be just overwhelmingly popular. It's just pure good.
Yep, just huge quality of life.
All right, do we want to talk about Actually, what do you got, Max?
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
There were a couple other things they mentioned. They mentioned class buffs and how those aren't going anywhere, but they're going to try to address classes that don't get a slot in raid. Something with like private auras too.
Oh, yeah. I guess, yeah. Well, before we leave raid, we could maybe touch on that. It actually seemed like those seemed like non-answers almost. Like they were, they were asked about private auras, and then they began to just describe why private auras were made, and not acknowledging the fact that they clearly have not done a good job at doing what they were made for and have caused extra problems. Obviously the main one being most things they make a private aura for, you still use a weak aura for that thing because you kind of have to, because of the way it's designed, except now you have to press a macro or use some kind of weird map list thing, and all of that's bad, right? So private aura is huge, big bad thing, and they kind of didn't give any answers to that. What was the other thing you said?
Raid buffs.
Class buffs.
Oh, yeah, they said the same thing. They were like, yeah, we're making sure that we're looking to have everyone be, but like, the beginning
But it's
of
not going anywhere.
Yeah, I mean, like the beginning of this expansion, we had less classes with raid buffs. They added some to a few classes, and now there's 2 specs in the game that have no reason to be in a raid. You could even argue 3 with DK, although certainly there are fights that are designed for you to have a grip in the raid. That is something shamans do not have, as bad as that can feel. But yeah, they sounded like they didn't really have a great answer for that. But also, we might have been talking to people that didn't work directly. They had 2 people answering our questions. Maybe they didn't work directly in those departments. I know specifically they said that they don't have any people working on the class side, which would be heavily involved in the raid buff thing, right? Was there one more thing? Oh yeah. Speaking of things that maybe we weren't a huge fan of, and this is definitely in Dorki's area, so I kind of want to tee you up for this. But they said that they were maybe going to innovate some affixes throughout the expansion. But they mentioned that they still didn't really feel like seasonal affixes should come back. They mentioned that they still like the idea for affixes as they currently are. They're just going to add more of them, kind of like entangling, keep rotating some out maybe and adding new ones like entangling corporeal, stuff like that they tried recently in Season 2. And that's kind of where they left it. And I know how I feel about that, but like, I think maybe all of us were hoping for something in Season 4 that didn't happen, but then maybe now in the War Within, that's why they're saving it. They're going to save it for this. Seems like it's going to be more of the same. How do you feel about that?
Yeah, because like we all had optimism. We were all like, if it's not going to be Season 4, it's definitely going to be the War Within. But it seems like the answer was basically, we don't really care about having seasonal affixes just because of the rotating dungeons, which kind of kind of makes sense. They're like, all right, rotating dungeons are impactful enough that it changes how season to season feels. So we decided we don't need seasonal affixes. But I feel like they're missing the key point that like seasonal affixes, when done right, just feel good and they're fun to play. Instead, we're dealing with these affixes that are not so fun. And they said specifically that like they don't really have any plans on like removing these affixes per se or completely reworking them. It would just be adjustments at most. So not a lot to look forward to on that, but it is
rotating dungeons. Rotating dungeons are still a thing. They mentioned that they liked that about the previous expansion. Are you still in the camp of that's a good thing?
I like it, but after an entire expansion of that, I just care more about their philosophy behind bringing back these dungeons and what makes it good, rather than what dungeons they bring back. You know how they brought back Taldazar, Waycrest, all these dungeons that I absolutely loved. But at the same time, they're just not the same dungeon, really. Like you can say like, oh yeah, like it's because it was BFA versus uh, current expansion, but they've made some pretty bad changes to some of these dungeons. Like some of these dungeons, Waycrest, for example, Tree Boss, absolutely awful. Waycrest had a bunch of good changes, but also some extremely bad changes. Ataldazar, the last boss was like, it did not need that change. They messed with the juggernauts too much. They basically screwed with the snapping. Now people are just doing like a different form of snapping. I don't know where they're going with like some of these dungeons, and I don't necessarily care about which dungeons they bring back anymore. I just care about if they do bring back dungeons, they need to figure out what makes the dungeons good and fun. Because they have made some pretty good changes, right? Like they brought back season 4 dungeons. Halls of Infusion got massively good changes, and that dungeon went from a complete stinker to it's not that bad anymore. And I'm just hoping they continue with that type of mindset when they come back with dungeons. But overall, I like that they bring back dungeons.
Dratnos, how do you feel about all the Mythic Plus stuff?
I like the rotating dungeons as well. I do think that I still think that season 1 should just be all new dungeons. I don't know. I still think it's weird to have a season 1 with old dungeons in, and then like you get to season 4 and it's all the Dragonflight dungeons, and I think that like it seems like I don't know what they were gonna do in War Within, but I personally still think that Dragonflight would have been better if season 1 was all the Dragonflight dungeons, and then by the time we get to season 4, it's like, and here are the most popular Dragonflight dungeons and some returning dungeons. But that's like a pretty minor nitpick. I do enjoy generally dungeons changing from season to season. I'm not sure if all 8 dungeons changing from one season to the next is correct. I think maybe 2 to 4 dungeons staying, so that you get to keep a little bit of consistency. You get to keep a little bit of like muscle memory and things that you've learned. That's something that I'm not sure is for like, not just for me specifically, but for players that play less M plus as well. I feel like there's a lot of relearning associated with a full rotation that maybe a little bit less of that would be good. But I don't know. I would put all of that in the like minor gripes tier. For me, the major gripe is like I'm sad that affixes in general, not even necessarily seasonal affixes, but affixes aren't getting like a primary overhaul, like a big overhaul or big rework, because I do feel like they are 8 years old now. Obviously every single affix has changed since Legion M plus started, but I do think that even the newer ones they've created have like Entangling is I think the best of them, but the other 2, Afflicted and Incorporeal, I'm not not a fan of, and like even like post nerf bolstering, not a huge fan of. Like
Sanguine too.
Yeah, Sanguine. Yeah. Like these affixes.
Maybe they rotate those out. Like maybe they keep iterating on affixes, and I don't know.
Like I think there is room to do good stuff with affixes in the minor clever changes department, but I would have been happier to hear like, oh yeah, we've got a big exciting plan for affixes coming up. Just you wait for the blue post like that.
Everyone
I would have been hyped for that. Yeah.
I mean, you mentioned it 8 years ago. Like 8 years ago is when they had this idea, and they built it off of Diablo's Greater Rifts. And then, which by the way, we're not going to be super negative today. There's a lot of very good stuff. It's just we kind of started with the announcements of the Q&A session we had just before this. But like 8 years ago, it was based off Diablo Greater Rifts. When you go into a Diablo Elite pack, you see different things, and it like changes the way you deal with it, and it's like meaningful. And then you go to the next Elite pack, and it's already different. Not next week, right away, right? And that like kind of changes the way you play all the time. As time has gone on, the affixes that the community likes the most are the ones that come the closest to not interacting with your character at all. And at that point, we're in a different spot now, right? Like this system doesn't make sense anymore. It's not like, oh, this is a cool way we're going to interact with these dungeons this week. Like, no, they keep nerfing them so they don't do anything because that's what people want. But if the whole point is for them to do something to you, like we're just in this place where affixes don't currently make sense. We're going to spend the whole episode on this. We've had these opinions before, but I was really looking forward to, after it wasn't announced in season 4, I was certain that they were going to do something in the War Within, and they weren't. And that's unfortunate for sure.
Yeah. So they also confirmed some things with Faded Season. They said they liked where Faded Seasons were. They said it was a big hit in Shadowlands, and we got confirmation that we didn't actually lose a raid tier because of whatever you guys might think.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like that's... People always complain about Faded or Awakened in the context of, I would rather have a raid tier, which is like... I mean, yeah, of course I'd rather have a raid tier, right? But like, the argument against... The counter-argument is like, well, you weren't going to get a raid tier. And then the counter-argument is like, well, why not? I want to get my 4 raid tiers over my 2 years. Like, that's what we used to get. Why can't we get that anymore? And I think there's kind of nobody's wrong in that, right? Like, it sucks whenever an expansion gets resources pulled from it before it's reached its full length, right? And like, given that once you accept that we're not getting a raid tier and you're saying like, okay, we've got 2 devs in a basement assigned to season 4, like, what do you want them to do? Do you want them to make a Faded, or do you want them to not, right? Like, what do you prefer? I don't know, I'm kind of indifferent at this point. I don't think I really care either way. Like, Faded is I guess the M+ season, it's nice to have an M+ dungeon rotation, M+ affixes on the raid side. At least going into this coming Awakened season, I'm not thrilled about it. I do think it would probably be fine to just leave us in a mirror still. I don't care, but buff the eye level, leave us there. That would, I think, maybe be better than having people relearn the vault and, you know, Aberrus fights and stuff. Ago. Yeah. But yeah, obviously it's not like Blizzard was looking at this and they were like, we could either do Faded or a raid tier. What do the players want? Yeah, they want Faded. The people clamor for Faded. Like, obviously
they pretty quickly dispelled that. They were like, we are not under the impression that's what people wanted. That was not a choice here.
Yeah.
They did say they would come out with something else if people didn't want Faded.
It
wouldn't be like a new raid tier or anything, but it would just be like, you know, something like, I don't know, maybe Plunderstorm, for example, just like something different. So it could be something different.
They specifically mentioned that the last time it was out, it got positive reception. And I think part of that was because they made one of the best raids ever in Castle Nathria. And like, when we were going back to do a raid, it was like, oh, wow, we get to do this raid again. And that was a big part of it. And the Mythic Plus was like, okay, we get a new season. It happened to have a really good seasonal affix. Like, pretty much everyone was happy, except for like people who wanted to do content in the world. And there was, again, that confusion between like, wait, this is a real patch? And they're like, why is there not all this stuff, even though it was a patch made by like 3 or 4 people instead of 200 or more. And now this time it's like, okay, well, we've seen it again. So like, if people this time don't like it, they basically said, okay, well, you know, if our feedback is we don't like this thing, then we obviously will do something else or not do this. And they've shown this season they will also experiment. I don't personally consider Plunderstorm and 10.2.7 time running as part of season 4. They seem a little separate, but I'm sure, you know, that dev work's going to have to go somewhere. So like, you know, I think all of us would rather have cool stuff like that. And they said the experience, the reception they've got to both of those were really positive. So all is good there.
All right, do we want to move on to delves? Little delve discussion.
Sure.
Let's talk about
delves. Fun, right? Yeah, we had a good time.
Yeah, we did some delves. The 3 of us, we did each delve of the 3 testable delves. We did them all once. We DC'd at the end of the last one, but I think we didn't miss much.
Didn't miss much.
Yeah, I mean, so delves have 2 tiers that you can do while you're leveling, right? You can do them on super duper duper easy mode, or even easier than that mode while you're leveling.
Yeah.
That's tier 1 or tier 2. Once you hit max level, you can then do...
2 for sure.
Yeah, we did tier 2, and it was like trivial, right? Tier 3 unlocks at max level, and then above that, there's tiers 4 through 11, and tier 8 is where rewards stop. So you can...
It was not 13. I thought it was
no,
14.
there's a 13th delve. So there are 12 total delves, and then there's a 13th delve that you can do after you've done the delves at tier 11. And that 13th delve is like a 1-room boss fight or something, is what they were saying the plan was.
Which sounds really cool.
Yeah, it sounds cool. Although the thing about the delves is that none of the mechanics in the tier 2 delves we did existed. There were no mechanics, right? Like, there was no... You literally just fought mobs that auto you, right? Like,
it was an extension of, like, a questing environment almost.
Yes. Now, could the higher tiers be something? Yes, right. Like the higher tiers could have swirlies to dodge or frontals, or like the mobs could do stuff. There could be things. But if it's just a bigger version of tier 2, it's just going to be training dummies, right? Like it's just going to be numbers checking mobs, which could also, I guess, be kind of fun. Sometimes target dummy stuff is fun. But I will say, I think our collective experience after doing the tier 2 one was like, okay, this is pointless, right? Like this is absolutely nothing. So
yeah.
It is a question of like how it scales up into the higher ones. Are the tier 8 ones, the tier 11 ones, like, is there something going on in those? And if the answer is no, it's probably not that bad because we don't have to do them. You can get heroic raid gear, I think, out of the vault from them, but you can get mythic raid gear out of the vault if you do mythic raid, which we do. So, that's better. So you don't have to do the delves if that's something you're doing. But it does seem like they are going to be a pretty good source of gear. So I'm very curious what exactly changes between tiers 2 and 11. And hopefully there's something in there. Hopefully for me, there's something in there interesting. And hopefully for the game's player base, they also want that. Because I don't like it when I want something different than like normies,
I mean, I think that's a big part of this, right? Like, I think just before we go any further, none of us are lost to the fact that we don't think this content was made with us in mind. So like if we think there's not a lot going on, it's possible that the majority of the players who play this game might really, really enjoy having some kind of solo, you can do it solo or with a group, like a solo avenue to do these things. And I actually was a lot more fond of it. So when we had these initial impressions, we didn't even know tier 3 through 11 existed. That only came out from the Q&A session we had a day later. So I learned a couple things from that actually I'm going to hold my opinion for a while. The fact that rewards stop at level 8 or 9, whichever one they said it was, and there are levels after that, I think that's significant because one thing Torghast failed at, it's not really super comparable. There's like Torghasty type powers you can click on sometimes, but like Torghast was needed for power in the game. So it could never be made, a roguelike can never be made to be interesting if everyone has to complete it, right? This, you don't have to complete the tier 11 delve. So they could crank up the difficulty from, 9, 10, and 11. And then this like single boss 13th delve could be like a mage tower boss every patch, right? There's no reason for it to not be hard. You don't need to do this for power whatsoever. It's I think the exact words they used, going above level 8 is for bragging rights. That kind of exclusively implies that they are going to make this somewhat of a challenge, and I hope they do, especially because, like, obviously, if it's not much of a challenge, I'm not going to be a huge fan of it personally. Not to say that it still wouldn't make it good content, but yeah, I don't know. I have a lot of high hopes, and maybe I'm misled by doing this, but I have a lot of high hopes for that single boss delve that is only unlocked after you've done every single one on the hardest difficulty that you would have no reason to do other than to get bragging rights. That just seems like it could be really cool and really hard. And even the casual community viewed the Mage Tower really positively. It was like I had to learn how to use my buttons, and I got this really cool transmog and, all that, right? Like, I think the casuals would be open to it being challenging if it wasn't needed. It was an aspirational goal, right? That's how I feel about it. I don't know, Dorky, if you had any other experiences.
Yeah, so my biggest gripe with it is, like, why are we hyped for the solo boss exactly? I think it's because the objectives are just lame. Like, what we had to do in these delves were, all right, so just go over here, click on these NPCs, talk to them, go pick up these chests, kill a couple of these mobs, and then you can proceed, right? I feel like, because when they announced what the delves were in BlizzCon, they said, oh, it's going to be more than just killing mobs. There's going to be, like, puzzles and stuff. I was thinking something much more interesting or exciting, whatever it may be, but it feels like a lot of these objectives, at least from the 3 delves we've done, like maybe it's different for the later ones, they're kind of just like whatever. And Diablo 4 tried this before with their nightmare dungeons. They're basically rifts, except they have like these weird objectives you gotta do, and people didn't really like the objectives. People just want to go in there and just like smash mobs and just like proceed, kill the bosses, and that part doesn't really too well with me. Like I feel like even if they upped the difficulty, if you still have to do all these like objectives, it doesn't really change too much. That's why I'm looking more forward to the whole single boss thing. Like that sounds cool. I kind of want And like I get it, like there's like a player of solo player, like a group of players who want solo content. I think what they really need to hit though is solo content that's actually meaningful. Like we've talked about having meaningful leveling content in our previous episodes, and like talking about having stuff that like is actually challenging. Maybe not challenging is the word, but like something that's engaging, right? Because whatever we did felt like it was kind of just
It was
mindless
real
content.
bad.
Yeah,
You
I mean,
kinda,
the
you kind of just walked in there and you just killed shit.
Yeah, it felt like no different than just doing a quest as you're leveling to 80, and that maybe that's the thing though, like maybe that's the goal. Like we're doing level 2, which is exclusively used for questing content. Like maybe it's supposed to be, oh, I'm doing a group of quests in this area. Oh wait, there's a delve here. That's cool. I'll do that. And it's supposed to feel like an extension of leveling, and then it's only higher. And we haven't seen those levels yet. Like maybe it gets really cool and really interesting, but I mean, right there, they've done cool solo content in this game before. Visions were incredible, right? Visions are a great example of that working well. It's kind of a niche example, but like the Withered Army training scenario in Legion, like you didn't do that for too long, but like your progression week to week was really, really fun and cool. Maybe Bran gets super powerful and you kind of feel that same powering up level as you did with Bran. Hopefully they incorporate elements like that. I thought it was really cool. We just haven't seen it yet, but definitely first impression was these are extremely boring, and it's not like just some random thing they're announcing. This is like a main expansion feature. Like they added it to the fucking vault. Like this is a huge deal, right? And it so far doesn't look like it's gonna live up to that, but it's early in alpha and we haven't seen all of it, so hopefully it gets better.
Yeah, they said it was an end game pillar that was supposed to be like on the same level as like
Yeah.
raid M plus PvP. It's like one of those main end game contents that you're gonna be doing when you play the Warfin. So
It's
I'm hoping
the fourth pillar,
big.
right? Like if you're an outdoor, it's the outdoor world, Apex content, which I don't know. I mean, yeah, there's a lot of room above tier 2. If it goes all the way up to tier 11, like there's room there for there to be some stuff. But I will say fundamentally, I hope it's not just mobs that auto attack you. Because
yeah.
Like, I just think that even if you tune that to be hard, like that's not fun either. I remember doing some Torghasts in some of the higher like floors when you're under geared or whatever, and it's just like, oh yeah, this mob just has a boatload of health. Like, hope you get some good powers so you can kill it, or otherwise, GN. I was thinking, man, when Plunderstorm came out, all the NPCs in Plunderstorm, like they all do dodgeable attacks, right? Like different kinds of dodgeable attacks. Yeah. I was thinking Delves could be sick if they were just populated with enemies that did that kind of stuff, right? Like if every enemy in Delves just did like swirlies and frontals and projected attacks.
That is a brilliant idea.
You could pull like 5 of them and it would be kind of fun to try and dodge all their stuff while you're DPSing them down. Like I feel like that would be sick, but
I think they should immediately add that to the game. I've never thought of that. That sounds so fun.
That's my code.
I want puzzles I want like something where you have to like figure out how to like get it done, but it'd be kind of hard to do. But if they somehow get like,
dude, for the sake of the Lorgok clips, I need that.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was gonna say. That's exactly what and also James didn't play then, so like the James Lorgok clips that could occur from that. Oh my god.
If they could literally just throw in one of those into like, all right, if you can like unlock your chest by completing that, what do you even call that? I don't even know what you call that. The Lorgok puzzle.
Yeah, the Lorgok puzzle.
If you complete that,
to like connect,
you get some like
thing.
Yeah,
connect the file. Yeah, you get like some cool powers or something. I definitely want to see like more interesting things outside of just like killing mobs. I mean, killing mobs is completely fine. In fact, if they had something like vampire survivors, that'd be sick. But I definitely want to see a little bit more innovative.
Yeah, to me, that's the thing, is like I hope they find some way to make the process of killing a bunch of mobs in a delve fun beyond just like, oh, it's fun to hit a training dummy, which is possible. There's definitely, I think the vampire survivors like way of doing it would be sick too.
Oh my god, dude! If you zoned into a delve and you had like a new starting weapon, and then like you had like kind of similar upgrades. I think it's an inevitability at some point that WoW does a vampire survivors mode. I think it would be a huge hit.
All right. Let's see. We talked about delves. Do you want to talk about the 2 dungeons that we did? We did the
great.
Sure.
The Rookery.
Absolutely.
And the Cinderbrew Meadery. So let's start off with the Rookery, which is a 3-boss dungeon. and not too much from the trash in the first area. There's a couple of griffins that are kind of annoying and do a lot of raid damage and stuff you got to dodge. Then there's that first boss, which absolute misery if you are a melee DPS
Yeah, we were
character.
3-manning that.
Yeah, we were
Melees.
3-manning the dungeon when we did it. I did it with a 5-man. It wasn't as bad, but it does feel awful for melee currently. It like flies to the middle of this thing. Maybe Frank actually has some footage for this if he really wants to work hard. Where like it'll go to the middle and then do this beam and range just get full uptime and melee can do nothing. Are you pointing to where the video?
Yeah,
will
Frank
be?
is going to move it to the. Well, he's going to, as you're talking about these different elements, he's going to put
gonna
the.
put it right there.
He's going to put
That's
them
beautiful.
there. Yeah.
And I also think they mentioned verticality being a thing in the raid. They were also making it a thing in Rookery. Like, it's a 3-boss raid. You always spawn at the beginning, but every time you fly back to the thing, you fly back to the level that you're currently on, and you keep going down. And I thought that was actually a cool use of that.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was a pretty nice and shortish dungeon.
Only
nice,
3
3
bosses. The second 2 both felt pretty good as well. Like there was some stuff to dodge. There was some mechanics, not too overwhelming. A lot of shields as well. A lot of shield breaky talents I think would be good in there. But yeah, that was a nice dungeon. I liked it. I liked that one. I actually liked it less than the meatery. The meatery was
100%.
sick.
Yeah, I think
Incredible
that's like
dungeon.
everyone agrees, yeah.
Incredible dungeon. The meatery is going to be one of the best dungeons ever. I'll just stamp my stamp on it now. I'm there.
Holy.
I'm a little bit worried because like the thing about the meatery, it has 10 out of 10 flavor, right? Like it's hilarious. Half the mobs have good names.
The boss is
abilities
called
are fantastic.
IPA.
Yeah.
Like the first boss, you like have to give beer to patrons. It's very thematically like a bar, and then the back half is very thematically like a bee place.
Yeah, like it's great.
Yeah,
It's,
the BEO.
it is fantastic. There's some funny lines in there. That being said, you could put funny lines on King's Rest and I would still hate it, right? Like that it
Correct.
could suck in execution, but I don't see it. It's not like I see those signs now. But yeah, I mean, flavor-wise, it's the best dungeon ever made, I think. Like it's
Yeah, you're exactly right. You know how Freehold is so thematically like pirate place? This place is that level of theme for what it's trying to do. It's a huge banger. And I saw the opposite signs, as you said you haven't seen the signs of, where I think it will be good. Like it has a bunch of mobs, which is always fun. They don't do a ton. Like you can do larger pulls. Obviously, we were doing it on like normal level. I'm not sure if like Mythic adds trash mechanics, but I know it adds boss mechanics. But like you can do bigger pulls. It, as far as I can tell, it isn't linear. Right at the beginning, you can
either the second wing, like you can do the side wings in either order. Yeah,
correct. Love stuff like that.
Yeah.
And they have the last boss is a bee CEO called the BEO, and then like there's all these little bees. And what's the guy that's like the
Buzz Bank or whatever on top of the B.
No, not Bank Buzz Bank. The
Yes, man.
Oh,
yeah,
there
you know
was
what I'm talking about.
the big ogres, right? The
Yes,
the
yes,
brand
what is their
ambassadors.
brand ambassadors, and they cast
They cast free swag and they cast career stagnation.
Yeah, and then the last boss, the BEO, casts. It has something called like a money bazooka or something.
The cash
like that.
cannon.
The cash cannon. Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
I don't know. The
There's
dungeon,
a Beezooka from the Bee Wranglers as well as Bestial Wrath. Yeah, I mean, there's some names here that I am.
It is
in
awesome.
awe
It is
of.
so.
Yeah.
I think it will be a universally well liked dungeon. Obviously, for the very very small like high mythic plus crowd, as always, there could be some like thing that isn't tuned for something to have infinite scaling, and it'll be the bane of your existence. But it is an awesome. I think it'll be extremely well liked.
The bullet hell like barrel section on the last boss as well just seems fun too. That boss was just fun to play. Right?
Oh yeah, on
Like,
mythic that'll be really hard too, right? Because it also does more damage to you the more barrels that are there.
Yeah, something like
Yeah,
that.
I would
That's what
assume
you're saying.
each barrel that blows up is gonna do damage. So
you wanna,
it's
like,
gonna
space it
be
out?
an
Yeah.
exciting healer fight.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, that's it was sick though. Yeah, I mean that dungeon
We've all,
all time great probably.
yeah, we've only seen 2 dungeons, and one of them was a compact vertical 3-boss fast dungeon, and the other one was a non-linear big pull, very thematic, cool B dungeon. So far, 100% of the dungeons we've seen are really good. So hope to see more of that.
Now you mentioned verticality in raid. That was one thing that we did get a little bit of discussion of, and also the full dungeon journal for the first raid is in not the full dungeon journal, but like the dungeon journal. Most of the mechanics, none of the mythic mechanics.
No mythic mechanics, but everything else. Yeah.
Everything else probably, obviously, a boss or two will fully change from now to release, but it's looking pretty exciting. And the last boss, there's the verticality comes in with she's like the queen of the Nerubians, and she, I guess, ascends her web, and you're also climbing the webs or chasing her or going up the webs to do stuff or something, and degree of verticality in that fight, which, verticality, not something we see in a lot of raid fights. The Senarth was a somewhat vertical encounter, which, has become a bit of a cultural touchstone of an encounter. People have posters of it on their walls and stuff. It's an iconic fight, so this one might live up to that as well.
Yeah, iconically bad.
Oh, what do you mean? No, Senarth was good.
Senarth was definitely not great. Yeah, Senarth wasn't great, but it's not because you were doing anything vertically. Had nothing to do with why Senarth was bad. And also, I think the verticality they kind of mentioned was like you're going to be slinging up webs and stuff like crazy. And it's an end boss, right? So you imagine it to be a much more intricate way of getting vertical than Senarth, right? So you're not going to be... If in P2 of that fight, which is where all the verticality happens, is you are killing a bunch of ads while going up to the boss's final layer where you're going to finish the boss off. If that's just running up a ramp of webs, I mean, that's just like, what did you talk about verticality for? This is like anyone could have done this, right? They made it seem like you're going to be doing some wild shit to do that. And that sounds really fun. So looking forward to it.
Yeah, the zones too. How do you guys feel about the zone? I think the first zone looks really nice.
Incredible,
it's massive, which kind of makes sense because like we have dynamic flying now. So I feel like the zones from here on out are probably just gonna be very large. But I actually really liked the first zone. It gives like very Warcrafty vibes, and the main city is really nice too. Big fan.
Yeah, I didn't see the main city. Like the main city in the zone.
That's gonna be the hub. Is the Dornagal.
Oh, that's the hub.
The Valdraken.
Oh, I didn't know that. Oh, okay. Cool. I'm going to look at that right now.
One memory you've procced for me, though, Dorky, is the dynamic riding or dynamic flying. They said they were going to put that on basically every mount. So previously when we heard about dynamic riding, it was like, oh, yeah, we're going to put it on the mounts it works on, that it makes sense on. But like maybe some like Mimiron's Head or whatever where it wouldn't work, we're not going to do it. Now they basically said, all right, we figured out how to do it for Mimiron's Head. Like we're doing it for almost every mount. There's a unicorn that you can play on alpha that has dynamic riding, and like it looks goofy as hell while it's doing it, but it still works, goofy. Which I think that's great. I think that they should put dynamic riding on, maybe if there's like 5 or 10 where it's like we really can't make this look at all okay, like fine, leave it off of them, but put it on all of them, and that seems like what they're doing. So that's a cool new development on that front.
It's faster than dragon riding, right? Am I the only one who noticed that?
I think it's just you.
I think
really.
Yeah. I think it's the same speed.
Okay, maybe it's the same speed. But like basically it's just dragon riding. Like it's not like hopefully people aren't expecting like it's gonna be like, oh, they've come up with, because like dragon riding is kind of a spiritual successor to Guild Wars 2 Griffin riding. And Guild Wars 2, if you guys have played that game, has a bunch of different mounts, and they are all kind of different. Like dragon riding for a like beetle in that game would be totally different than a griffin. Like it's not called dragon riding, but like each mount feels different to pilot, right? Dynamic riding is not that. It is literally dragon riding, but they just made your mount look like it can do that. And we've only seen like Drake type dragons that are in your alpha journal right now, and this unicorn, which looks very interesting. Like it definitely is like, this is weird, kind of, but like not in a bad way. It's a good thing. Like dragon riding made the game a lot better. And to Dorky's initial point, it's really noticeable in dragon. What's the name of this expansion? Dragonflight. Yeah, Dragonflight zones, and this new zone is that they are massive, and I feel like the pure size of them, you really feel that, and that can only exist because of dragon riding and dynamic flight. And I just think that's maybe the biggest impact that it's had on the game, which I think is really cool.
So sorry to detour you from talking about the zones, though, Dorky, because I agree with you. The first zone is like, it's great. Like, I mean, it reminds me of like Nagrand, however you're supposed to pronounce that place. All those kind of zones. It's got a good vibe. They showed off a lot of the others as well. We got to see some footage of like the other zones, and I think one of the concerns that people had after Zaralek Caverns was that if we do an underground expansion, which outside of the first zone, they are underground zones, right? Was that it was going to feel like claustrophobic and like closed in. And it seems like all 3 of the big underground zones, they have either I think the first one of them is like, it's leaning into the like Mines of Moria kind of mining-y type thing, the clang of pickaxes. And then there's Hallowfall or whatever, which is supposed to basically feel like an outside zone, and it looks like it does. And then there's the Nerubian place, which looks sick as hell. I don't know, that the whole Nerubian vibe really works for me. Although if you're arachnophobic, they have put in a arachnophobia mode, which
An accessibility mode, yeah.
it polys all of the spiders into crabs. It's
Oh,
it's-
cool.
it's
But what
sick.
about crab-phobic people?
Well, first of all, don't
Oh, they
turn
could
on
be the spider.
arachnophobia mode. But yeah, there's
Yeah.
not a reverse mode. You can't turn all the crabs into spiders. You can only turn all the spiders into crabs. So the crab phobes out there, we got to start
we
a
love crabs.
letter writing campaign to get the reverse feature in. Yeah.
Dude, Dorky, I'm laughing to myself so hard because you remember earlier when we were on Alpha and I tried to fly to the other zones? And then you were like, I think there's fatigue. And I'm like, oh no, the zones aren't implemented yet because I'm flying over them on the map, but I don't see them. And I just now figured out they're all underground, and that's why I could not see them.
Oh, okay, that makes sense.
That is not good for me, but all
Yeah.
good.
Yeah,
Dude,
I also tried to fly to them, but yeah, it doesn't work.
You know what game does underground zones really well? Freaking Elden Ring, man. That
Yep.
what was that place
Narstella or
called? I forgot
whatever.
what it was.
Yeah.
Yeah. Down there, dude, that zone looks so beautiful. If they can like capture that feeling, that would be amazing. Just like an underground, almost like sky, like
I mean, Hallowfall, I think, is supposed to have basically like there's a big crystal that's basically a sun in there that makes it feel like outside.
That sounds so cool.
Yeah.
I mean, with how big the zones are, I'd be really surprised if anything felt claustrophobic. These zones are massive. So it should be, you could probably not even see the ceiling.
At least in Hallowfall, I think that's right. Yeah, I think the ceiling is like giga high up.
Yeah.
We'll see what the other two end up being like, but yeah, I don't know. I think it's the aesthetics of what we've seen so far have been cool. I don't know. I mean, the WoW art team has been consistently knocking it out of the park, right? Like even if you talk about Shadowlands, a zone that I have like or an expansion I have vibe problems with, like none of that is because the zones were bad. Revendreth is an all-time great. Ardenweald's an all-time great. It's just like they weren't connected zones to each other. You had to, fly through Ouroboros, Misery, airport thing, teleports. Like that was bad. But the art team has just never failed to produce bangers. So I'm
True.
yep, never fail.
It's
Dude.
a 10 out of 10 as usual on that front.
I'm sad there was no in-game music implemented yet.
Yeah.
They never have it for alpha, do they?
I'm not sure.
Well,
Yeah.
there was music. Like if you have music on, right? It's just it's like old
I mean, it was
music.
just like Stormwood
default
and
WoW
stuff,
music,
but
yeah.
Yeah, default WoW music.
No, not
yeah.
the new zones.
All right. What other any other alpha stuff that we? The classes: monk,
Yeah,
warrior, druid.
we cannot miss the classes.
Yeah, monk, warrior, druid all got like giga overhauls to their class trees. I think monks is the sickest. Monk is so
Oh,
good.
yeah.
The bottom of the monk class tree is, I mean, it's
Perfection.
phenomenal.
I think it might be the best class tree in the entire game.
Yeah, like there's so many nodes there that's just like, hey, this is cool. Do you want it? And it's not even like there's a couple of nodes where it's like, okay, 4% more physical damage, 4% more magical damage. Like, yeah, okay, you have to take these nodes, sure. But then like 5 of your points you can split however you want between, like, do you want Transcendence to heal you? Do you want Transcendence to port you to a player instead of to a ghost on the ground? Do you want your roll to charge you to something within 10 yards? Do you want
to be able to double jump after you roll to get like an extra little wind burst?
It's
like
so good.
You get everything you need really easily, and you have 5 to 7 points to get things that are exclusively like really cool things you don't need that are just really cool. And it is unbelievable. And the Windwalker spec tree is I've been doing dungeons all day. So many different new ideas. They fixed the fact that the class had basically no stats. Haste now scales Fist of Fury damage. Haste actually feels necessary for your rotation, which is before you like felt like all haste was bad. Like now you really feel haste, which is like important for that stat to be good and for your class to be good. They like fixed so many problematic nodes. They removed AoE Touch of Death. They removed Serenity. They added a like mini big beefy Serenity like buff to your Storm, Earth, and Fire that doesn't feel like you're capping resources. It is an incredible rework, and if you guys are Windwalker fans, you are going to be in heaven when you get to try this. It is so good. What else did they do? They did Mistweaver, I think, too. I know if any of us are smart enough to heal or have tried that.
I was talking to Growl about it. He says they basically give Mistweaver the Dispriest treatment, which
What does that mean?
if you guys, so this priest for like when did they change this priest? I don't remember when, but like for this entire patch, this priest has felt like super good. They basically reduced a lot of the button bloat. They made it like simpler to play, but it feels good. Or I guess like Red Paladin. Red Paladin is like the other example of a class that got much better to play, and it just like feels really good. But so far, I've been hearing like super positive things about Mistweaver overall.
Okay. I know that there was actually one thing. So we mentioned we were going to keep podcasting until they removed some of the defensive bloat in this game. And we have very limited experience with this yet, as Monk is one of the few classes that has been like gotten major attention on the War Within. But they just removed Dampen Harm, which most classes, if they gained Dampen Harm, would be like significantly tankier. They
Oh, did
they removed a defensive from one of the most like button bloated defensive classes in the game. So hopefully a sign of things to come. I have not checked, and I don't believe they've done a lot of mage stuff yet. But like mages have a million buttons. And please, if you guys are out there and playing these classes, they're like, oh my god, he's calling for our classes to lose buttons. Hey guys,
that's the worst, man.
For the and just this is also just not including tanks at all. But like for the health of the game, the solution cannot be, oh, let's make sure that hunters and shamans have 5 defensives like mages do. It needs to be, hey, the classes that have 4 or 5 defensives need to have less of those universally. It's not good for balance, and it also changes the way that damage is dealt to you throughout the expansion to be much more one-shotty and way less like more linear damage, like your health is going up and down slowly. So like it needs to happen. We've talked about, we're not going to go into a full thing on it. Like we've explained why. There's really good videos on it. But hopefully that's a sign of things to come, that the classes that have a ton of those buttons lose a few of them. So everyone in the game just in general has less, except for the classes that already do.
Dude, the crazy part is DK actually gained tankiness, and that class is really extremely tanky. Like on the whatchamacallit, rider tree, it gets like a bunch of like small stuff that helps with his tankiness, which is kind of wild to think about.
Well,
Yeah.
every
quick
class,
tangent.
every single hero talent, I think, has defensive
Gaining
additions.
defensives, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that part is kind of not so good. But yeah, quick tangent is actually kind of funny because we're talking about this whole defensive thing. Rest or shamans in general, you know how whenever we bring up defensiveness, there will always be like people who say like, "Oh, but look at shaman," because people always like talk about how shaman's not very tanky.
Yeah.
And the crazy thing is like I had this discussion with Growl the other day. Growl was like, "Dude, at the beginning of Dragonflight, he was like freaking out about how tanky shamans were because shamans were getting so many different tanky talents added to the class, but because every other class gained so much more, suddenly shaman's like not looking so tanky. Because if you compare shaman now to any other class in like Shadowlands or BFA, it would be considered one of the tankier specs.
True. You have Ankh,
It's
you
just
have
crazy to
Earth
think.
Ellie, and then they gained Earth Ellie this expansion, the Earth Ellie health thing, and they also, what was it? They gained like that thing where you go below 30% and it like gives
Yeah,
you a
the fake
heal.
cheat.
Yeah, the fake cheat. Yeah, like that, and that would enough be good. But I just think every class needs to be more like a shaman. Like if every class in this game had like an Astral Shift, an Earth Ellie, and like some like passive heal thing, like something like that, that would be, the game would just be better than it is now with classes having a billion defensives for sure.
Yeah, 100%. But yeah, going back to the class, like all the class trees and stuff. So Druid actually got some major changes, and I think the general sentiment is that it's kind of worse. Like it's kind of hard to get all of what you want. Basically, they condensed a lot of nodes. They made it easier to get this spell, which has been a problem for Druid. They made it easier to get Astral Influence, which is the extended range. They made it easier to get Kick if you're like a Wrestler Druid, for example. But the problem is they added all these extra nodes towards the bottom, like just random crap, like increase shred damage, increase moonfire damage. These points that you have to take to get to the bottom, and because of this, if you want to get all of the stuff you had before as a druid, you would have to sacrifice something. Like it's hard to get Stampeding Roar, Typhoon, all your passives, In-Cap Roar, Ursine Vigor, like all that stuff, right? It's so hard to get every single one of your stuff that you had before. Which I mean, I don't think is necessarily a bad thing, right? Like I think it's good that you have to make choices between what utility you want to grab. The problem is when it's not even across the classes. Like Druid has this problem, but somehow every other spec in the game or every other class in the game can just grab all of your utility, right? Like everyone has their defensives and their passives and their utility, but Druid is running into that problem.
You have
And
4 specs, right?
yeah, but there are some pretty cool stuff. So there's the fluid shifting thing. I forgot what it was
Yeah,
called
fluid
exactly.
form. It's so
Yeah,
cool.
fluid form. That is really cool. It's basically if you hit one of the buttons to their respective spec, like if you hit shred or rake, it instantly puts you into cat form regardless of what form you're in. If you press mangle, it instantly puts you into bear form. This is gonna actually be so nice for a lot of specs. For Residue, for example, you don't need to, all right, press stealth, or not press stealth, or at the beginning, right? You press stealth or you press cat form and then you rake. Instead, it's just, all right, you're healing, 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 rake, and then you just instantly in cat form, you just like kick right away too. It's gonna be so
Instantly in
much
bear
better.
form. Yeah, just
Yeah.
right away you can swap. I mean but that's kind of the issue with the class treater. Like we just talked about why Windwalkers and just monks feels great. It's because you get all your points and you have 5 points to spend on the really cool new shit. Druids have a problem where yes, there is really cool new shit, but you don't have the points to actually spend on it.
100%.
That's the
Yep.
that's
That
the
is the
thing that
problem.
needs to be
But
addressed. Yeah.
that is an easy problem to fix if Blizzard fixes it. Like that at least is just like turn some of these 2-point throughput nodes into 1-point throughput nodes, bang, right? Like
Yeah, creating the cool stuff is infinitely, which they
Right.
did, is
They have done
infinitely
that.
harder than being able to access it, right? So
Yeah.
okay.
I was gonna say, speaking of some of the cool stuff with Druid specifically, going back to that, Guardian Druids, Druid of the Claw is actually really cool. I gotta say, like, I am a big fan of this tree. It's so cool. You can like, especially with the fluid form, because like fluid without fluid form it'd be kind of awkward. But like, Druid of the Claw right now, you can like do all a bunch of bear stuff. Your rotation changes slightly, which is nice because bear has a really simple rotation. And then now on single target, you could also just like straight up just be in cat when you're doing single target. You could just like straight up just rake the boss and then instantly apply a 5-point rip. And then you press mango and it just shifts you back into bear and you just like I don't know. I think that part was so cool. That's my favorite hero talent tree currently.
Do you want a detour to talk about the hero talent trees? Because I know some of them
Yeah,
have felt
yeah.
pretty impactful and some have felt not. And I don't think
Extreme-
necessarily
yeah.
bad.
Yep.
Like Shadowpan Monk. I had a lot of fun playing a Shadowpan Windwalker Monk, but none of that was related to Shadowpan. Like Shadowpan was just
correct.
it was
Same.
there in the background. It was all passive. It was
Yep.
you just click those nodes and if you proc Wisdom of the Wall, you could maybe feel it if you were looking for it. But like if you weren't, you could ignore all the stuff from Shadowpan. Whereas by contrast, something like Druid of the Claw is like entirely active, right? Like to be getting anything out of Druid of the Claw, really. I mean, I guess it does amp some buttons a little bit, but almost all the power of that tree comes from being able to cat weave if you're bear, or being able to bear defensively for free if you're a cat, right? Like that is all the power in that tree, which I think it's cool. But depending on which spec you're playing, you may have 0, 1, or 2 engaging hero talent trees, and you may have 0, 1, or 2 like free ignore this talent trees. It's I feel like it would be good if every class had like one of each, but obviously they can't do that with how they're allocated
Yeah.
between the specs, right?
I found some hero class or hero talent trees. So the reason why it's important to talk about this today is we've read all about these, but this was the first time we were able to play them, and that obviously is huge, right? Shadowpan I wasn't a huge fan of, but then I played it and it was like, okay, this is doing good damage, but like you could just act like it's not here. Maybe some people actually want that. You want the
100%.
theme, but you don't want that, right? And then Conjure the Celestials, one that I was kind of off of after playing with it, it's like this is really thematic. You have all of the August Celestials helping you if you use it rotationally. You get like all of that like you get all of your like cooldown reduction back on your main spells. You like the active use feels pretty good. But like you could definitely tell with these hero talents, and you could feel this by reading them, but especially playing them. I don't know. Blizzard, when they had their initial sketch for these hero talents, they're like, here's how many we need to make. We have 39 specs. Each one of them needs to be able to pick 2 of these things. Okay, that's a lot. Okay, guys, let's all have our best ideas for what hero talents would be. And they probably wrote like 10 on the board, like Dark Ranger and Rider of the Apocalypse and the Hammer, the Templar one. And they were just listing bangers, right? And then they just had to fill a lot of slots. Like it is very clear that some of them are like these huge, iconic, massive, really awesome, cool things that happen to also be really well made. And then there's a bunch that are like, we had to make a hero talent for this class and we kind of just figured it out. And you can kind of feel that while playing it. I wonder if that's going to change. the closer you get to the expansion, because obviously before, from the Dragonflight Alpha to release, there was a ton of class and spec tree changes, like a million of them. So like I imagine that will be that way. So definitely give your feedback. But I have definitely noticed a quality difference that I wasn't expecting from just reading them, from actually playing them. But it's also, some of them live up to it. Like Rider of the Apocalypse, when you press army and you get all your little dudes to come out, it's nuts. Like it's super insane. So I don't know.
Yeah, some of them are cool, some of them are really fucking lame. And the really lame one so far for me was the Demon Hunter, or Vengeance Demon Hunter one. I don't even remember what it was called. That's how lame it was.
Eldrachi
Yeah.
Reaver?
Probably.
Fellsguard?
I did not know. Fellsguard was not released yet. It was not yet
Yeah.
implemented. But that one felt so awful. Like, I did not notice it whatsoever. There's like no cool effects, nothing. It's just occasionally I get a proc for my throw glaive, and then I throw my glaive, and then I don't really notice anything else, and I'm just playing Demon Hunter. So it felt like maybe it was just like a bunch of passives that you do not notice at all. That part is like extremely lame. But then on the other hand, there's like Druid of the Claw, so sick, and I was playing Rider of the Apocalypse, I was playing on Holy DK, I was like super cool. And even the Deathbringer one for Blood Decay, it was like mostly passive, but it was cool as hell. Like your Blood Boil became blue, so you're just like doing Shadow Frost, Blood Boils. Your when you hit the Exterminate, when you Marren the mob after when you get the proc, it just like does like a really cool effect. I feel like they need more of that. They need more of the effects, the sounds, like
You need to feel it. You need to
Yeah,
feel
yeah, you gotta
like
feel it.
you need to feel like
feel like
you're
you're
a
owning it.
Shadow Pan monk, right? Like when you play a Shadow Pan monk, this sounds like hyperbolic. You feel nothing. Like you feel like you're playing
You literally
Windwalker.
don't. Yeah, you literally don't feel it.
Yeah, but the thing is, it's like it's as easy as making it so that like when you leg sweep, Taran Zoo shows up and like, you know, there's like a black smoke cloud when you leg sweep or something. Like as easy as doing a couple little things like that. Because like the warrior ones, I played Colossus Warrior or whatever, or Fury Warrior, and literally all that does is you take Whirlwind off your bar and you put Thunderclap where Whirlwind was on your bar, and then like sometimes your Thunderclap lights up and it does like big lightning strikes when you press it. And then like a couple of your other abilities are proc and lightning strikes, and like that felt badass and very different from Slayer Warrior, which was kind of like execute themes. Didn't really feel that good on Fury. A little bit of Bladestorm theme as well, so you talent the Bladestorm talents and stuff. And I don't know. I was doing 0 DPS on both of them, so maybe I was screwing it up on both of them. But maybe it just number bad, but or maybe tuning bad. But
you felt
it was
good
sick.
anyways,
The
right? 'Cause,
Colossus
like, you
one
didn't
was
have
sick.
meters on.
Yeah, I was having a lot of fun
yeah.
on Colossus until you told me how much damage I was doing, and then I was just in utter despair. It was bad.
Yeah. I mean, as long as you feel like you're doing a lot of damage, right? Like that's what they
Yeah.
capture. Like if you have your meters disabled and you feel like you're popping off, that's a good feeling.
And
if
just
you don't feel like you're popping off, that's not good.
Like pressing Thunderclap on Fury Warrior was enough for it to feel different. Like pressing Thunderclap and having a cool Thunderclap animation. So like the bar it's not like these hero talent trees that we're saying are unimpactful. They can stay unimpactful mechanically, but I do think that, yeah, you should see some shit that makes you be like, oh yeah, that's a Shadow Pan right there, right? Like there should be more than there is right now. And it's early in alpha, right? Like that is the kind of thing that
they're not even all released yet.
If is coming, but I hope it is. I think it's important.
That's actually another important thing too. Like you were saying, how like you press Thunderclap more when you're a Thunder Lord or whatever hell.
Yeah,
and like,
you literally
press
don't have it on
Execute
your
more
bar
when
if you're not, and you do if you're that one. Yeah, which is weird, but it's cool.
That's like a really good way of like differentiating the hero class talents. Like just like something as simple as like, okay, like what if I press Spirit Bomb more in this build, and then what if I press Soul Cleave more in the other build? Like that alone would be pretty impactful in terms of like just very minor changes to the class.
Yeah, and we haven't seen them all yet. I still think Enhance doesn't have a single one. Shadow Priest got Void Weaver, so they got a one to play, and I think Assassination Rogue doesn't have one either. So they haven't released a new one since Trickster. But what other new hero talents got brought into the game besides?
I think it's just Void Weaver.
Someone said the Mistweaver. There was a new Mistweaver one brought in, which is
Master
Mistweaver
of Harmony?
Brewmaster.
Is that in?
Yeah, Master
It's
of
not
Harmony.
implemented yet. But
Okay.
yeah, they
okay.
added that.
So it might just be Void Weaver.
Text.
Which again, Frank initial impression. He hasn't played Shadow Priest full expansion, but he's like a lifelong Shadow Priest. He read it, and I asked him to give me his impression, and he initially was like, "This is too much pressure. Don't ask me to do this." And then, so I definitely should be bringing this up right now. And then he looked at it more and was like, "This seems really really cool. You get to move with Void Torrent. You know, like it kind of like forces you into Mind Spike, but there's a lot of cool stuff with it. So I'm interested to see how people react to it, because it does seem like one of those that could actually be really good. Like you can almost tell by their name. Like you can tell by their name if they're going to be sick. Which definitely holding out to see Storm. What is it called? Stormbringer? Is that the enhanced Ellie one? Got high hopes for that big time.
Yeah, agree. Okay. Do you want to talk about profession tab change? I don't know what that means, but you put it in the.
I said profession tab. I didn't mean that. I meant like your spellbook.
Oh yeah, spellbook change.
Yeah.
That's it.
I didn't type that at all, but that's what I meant. I typed profession tab change. Okay, yeah. So now when you press P, if that's still your default bind, or if you just are in your talent pane, you can just go through that. Now it's a completely new UI. It's all laid out in front of you. You can have it a little bit bigger, a little bit smaller, depending on how you get to that menu. I was asking Tally. Tally thinks there should be a search function. He felt pretty strongly about that.
Yeah, wait, didn't they say they had a search function? I'm pretty sure I remember from BlizzCon they said it was going to be a search function.
I don't think there is one. But
there isn't one, but I could have.
It's all there though. Like you're not going through 2 pages of all of your spells anymore. It's like every single thing is on 1 page, as far as I can tell, and it's split up between, you know, like your regular monk stuff and your Windwalker or whatever your spec is. So it seemed easier to pull stuff onto your bar. It seemed easier to kind of get an overall like overlook of everything. I don't know. I really like it personally.
Yeah, it would be much easier for me to click innervate whenever I need to innervate my healer, because they always ask for innervate, but then I don't have it ready.
So you're gonna open up your spellbook for that?
Yeah, the problem is I still gotta find it. Like I need that search function real bad.
Oh yeah, I usually just do a /cast whenever there's a spell like innervate that needs to get cast. Yeah. That's the easiest way. Although then you got to test your
hell no,
your
that's way too many globals wasted. I am not giving that many globals.
You got to practice. You got to do the type racer practice runs.
That's true.
Yeah.
I have another kind of interesting topic. So we very rarely get to interact with the default UI, and they spent a ton of time iterating on that in Dragonfly. Like even in PTR, like they have LVUI stuff up in a day. So like I barely ever have to interact with it. But in the alpha, it was pretty hard to get any weak auras to work. So I just like fully set up a UI with default, and I felt like I was playing just like normal with no other anything like that. Like some buff tracking is something I definitely noticed. Like I just wanted to open up the conversation as to like what still needs the most work with default UI, and my big one is you definitely need to be able to have specialized buff and debuff tracking and something like that, like something like a weak aura package would do right now, that just have whitelisted buffs pop up in a specific spot, or being able to blacklist debuffs or put them in a spot that matters. Like that is the thing that I noticed I paid attention to the least, is like all the random buffs that happen with my class.
I have a different opinion on that. For that specifically, because the game already has like some of these built in. Like if you play a Frost Mage, right? Like there's already the power auras, you know what I'm talking about, like the shit that like
when you have like Ice Lance up.
When you have Ice Lance, or like the thing above you when you get like a flurry proc, or like you have icicles above your head, right? Like I think they need to do more of that instead. I think they need to just like, all right, your character does something different whenever you get a specific buff, and it would like this ties into the whole thematic feel that we talked about with classes, right? Like what if you get a certain proc, your character just like does something really cool, or like like obviously Rider Apocalypse, whenever your Rider's proc, you literally have Death Knights coming out. So I feel like that's what they need more of in terms of buff track. But I do agree though, like the buff tracking is garbage. The real problem I have is nameplates. Oh my god, the nameplates, the base nameplates are the worst thing ever.
Very bad.
It's literally unplayable. I literally cannot tell if I'm losing aggro as a tank, or if I'm ripping aggro, or like what's going on. These nameplates are absolutely trash.
Yeah, and maybe like Plater is so good that a lot of people don't realize it. But yeah, if you're gonna revamp anything in the default UI, the nameplates could be a lot better. Also, like the personal resource display as a Windwalker monk, it does have some buffs that are kind of important to your character under the thing. And I think for monks there is one, and it's your teachings of the monastery stacks and nothing else. Like I would love for the option to put like your Dance of Chiji proc there, or your Blackout Kick proc there, so you have to track less from like on actual buttons. Like just options like that would be insane. You mentioned like knowing when things are happening. Windwalker monks have Shadowpan monks, the hero talent has this thing called Wisdom of the Wall at the bottom, and it's like after you spend 400 energy, it like consumes your multi-strike things, whatever they're called, flurry strikes, and it gives you a buff that is maybe like the biggest buff in the entire game. It's like it like crit damage by 25%, like just like mastery value by 50, just huge. There's like 2 more lines on it too, but you have no clue when it's up. I would have to look at the top right of my screen for my buffs, or I would have to move my buffs, which you can't white or blacklist at all, right next to my character, which would just be a bunch of nonsense most of the time, right? And like I didn't even know when that was up. And like that could be added to there, or again, just like the buff thing would just be so. Or you could make your character, like you said, thematically, when you get that buff, your character turns into some crazy panda shadow pan man, sick. and then like again, so that's just another way that visuals could help you. But I really feel like the default UI is really held back by those 2 things specifically.
Yeah, I think customizable personal resources play could actually just be really good. Like if you could move it around a little bit more and like size it, change how it looks a little bit, and then choose what's tracked on it. I don't know. I mean, that would replace a lot of weak auras for a lot of players. That would replace a lot of need for weak auras for a lot of players.
People would use that on live in lieu of weak auras, probably.
Yeah, a lot of people would, and people who wouldn't would also be happy, and that's fine. Like that's no problem. As long as there's a good alternative to weak auras, it no longer becomes a problem to people that choose to use weak auras, right? Like that's totally fine.
I think it would also just be cool as hell. Like the more I think about it, like it would be so cool if your character just like does something different anytime you get like a specific buff.
Oh yeah, like the
procs, something like super simple.
Proc visibility, like through just the natural gameplay. Yeah, I mean, I think that is the ideal. But obviously, like that's really hard with how many different procs there are and how much stuff is on your screen in a big pool as well. Like, are you gonna notice? I don't know. But
I mean, like, you know, like obviously we want to be like Fire Mage, right? Like, you know a mage is combusting by just
100%.
looking at the mage. And or like you know a Boomkin is in Incarn because like it's got like a bunch of arbor and shit. Like I think that part adds so much flavor. Or like you know a Shadow Priest is about to pop off when it's just shooting 50 million auspicious spirits or whatever. Like I think that all that adds so much flavor, and it's just
you nailed that word, Dorki. You nailed it. It's one of the hardest words to say. Yep.
Let's freaking go. There was one more thing I was gonna say. Oh, because, you know, like...
We're a family podcast?
Yeah.
Yeah, we're family friendly, you know? Like, we're very auspicious. But, what the hell was I going to say? I completely forgot.
I'm sorry. Quick question. What do you think auspicious means?
Yo, there's one thing that's criminal with the base UI. You can't drag windows. What the fuck? Like, how's that okay?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Like, I'm just, like, trying to drag my Windows 3 alpha, and it's, like, it's so annoying. Like, how is that a thing in fucking 2024?
Man, and also as you guys are listening to this too, as far as we know, there's actually a lot of interviews happening or have happened in the last 2 days that are going to come live. So there actually could be a bunch more information from people who were able to ask direct questions. And I don't think any of us were a part. None of you guys did one, right?
I didn't do one, but I did get asked for if I had any good questions by somebody who's doing one.
Yo, are we getting a PoddyC interview?
Questions.
Ooh, we could. If we reached out for a PoddyC interview, I bet it would happen. I don't like that idea though. What I'd really like to do on the PoddyC is to get a developer for an entire episode, and I think we can pull that off. That would be the move, rather than having an official like suit and tie interview with them where they usually have very quick answers and they have to leave in 30 minutes. I don't know.
Yeah, it would have to be like a full-on podcast episode.
Dratnos does look good in a suit though. That was like one of our early podcast episodes. He was all suited up.
I had my golden vest thing.
Yep.
Yeah, get it back.
Yeah.
I think there's an emote for that. It's a goodie.
Oh hell yeah.
All right, is there any other things from Alpha that like really stuck out to you guys? I think we might have gone over it all.
Yeah, I think I don't know. I mean, I guess overall impressions of the expansion so far. To me, it seems like it is low in the quantity of things that it's doing or trying to do, but very high in the quality so far. Delves aside, where Delves, I would say, at best, are going to look very different than the version we did, or at worst, are going to not be for us, right? Or going to suck for everybody, therefore, right? Like, those are kind of it's in that space right now, right? Like, either it's very different from what we did, or it's bad. But Warbands, all the stuff around Warbands, hero talents, the hero talents are, I would say, on average, pretty good right now, and there's huge upside still available for them to capture over the course of this alpha cycle, so... Mm-hmm. I'm pretty excited for this expansion, despite it being, I would say, it's not taking necessarily as big of a swing at WoW, like trying to like list 10 different huge features it's trying to bring. Like it's more focused, but I think it's got a lot of potential to be like really upending the baseline World of Warcraft experience and like overhauling it, right? Like improving some of the biggest remaining ancient things about WoW, like the non-account wide shit. So I'm very hyped for this expansion after playing it for the last 2 days.
Yep, same.
Yeah, I'm up as well.
Very, very high opinion on what we've seen so far, except for delves, which definitely stink unless they're very different than what they were. And the hero talents thing, I think, just after seeing it and playing with it, I think by the time this expansion comes out, is going to be an awesome addition to the game. It's so much more than the initial thought of, oh, they wanted to add stuff at the bottom of all these trees, but they can't, so they made it like up here, and this is the thing. But like the theme and the feel, when it's done right, can be so much more than that, and is obviously going to be really good. So, really looking forward to that. Love that Heroic Week is coming back. It's been like an hour since we talked about that. That is, I mean, just me personally, huge for the race. Way less characters involved for us. Way less splits when Mythic is out. So overall, huge dub for that. And hopefully they do it right for Mythic Plus. And then what else? Yeah, just Warbands. Warband Zone. Warbands hard own.
Yep,
by the way, I
right
will
Mythic Plus.
I will have the best looking Warband picture. I would challenge any of you to have a Warband picture that rivals mine with the guys around the
speaking
campfire.
of Warband pictures, I hope there's gonna be some prestigious Warband pictures. I want to get like something really cool from
like
You mean the
background
of your Warband.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that would be that is the kind of reward that sounds like it wouldn't matter to people, but definitely would, right? Like they should definitely do
matters,
those.
yeah.
Like they should, if they had 10 different ones locked behind different achievements, like, oh, do all the delves at level 11, do Keystone Master, like get Cutting Edge. If all of those gave you a different background, not all players would care about that, but the players who did would care so much. It would be.
I think that would actually get universal approval.
Yeah.
I don't think there would be a negative person who's just like, you know what, I just like the campfire. I wish they'd make content for me. Like, no, everyone would interact with that.
Yeah.
Lost Archives that actually, like different backgrounds you can unlock, and it's actually pretty sick.
Yeah, it'd be cool. All right, I think that's everything we have for this special edition of the PoddyC. We'll be back, I guess, probably next week, and we'll get to talk about all the interviews and stuff that happened and whatever info came out about those and alpha things. But for now, we've covered all the main revelations that we had to keep secret with our extremely well-kept NDA, not violated by any of us under any circumstances.
Nope,
well done, team. But yeah, that's it for episode 21.
Is my dog eating its butt right now?
Also...
Look at my dog on the couch, white dog.
100%.
Oh, it is.
It is just
chowing down.
Chowing down on the foot.
I wish I could eat my foot.
All right, Poddy, goodbye.